Hello, everybody. My name is Kayode Alabi, and I'll be talking to you today about understanding yourself. And how do you navigate the world as well by understanding who you are. It's important in today's world that especially in today's competitive world, where your competition is everywhere. You can see them on social media, and you're thinking, "What's actually wrong with me? Am I the problem?" And I think in that constant world of like engaging with people, how do you actually engage with people? How do you actually navigate relationships with people? I think that's actually solely, connects to understanding who you are in the world, understanding your place in the world, understanding yourself in the world. And personally, I've faced several setbacks myself. I've faced several challenges that I had to overcome. There were times I have to like actually speak to myself. But one of the ways that I grounded myself is through a self paradigm that I developed. And it's that way that I've been able to understand how to understand myself and how to understand the world as well, right? Even when you look at the definition of self-esteem. So when you also look at the definition of self-esteem, it is grounded in the idea of self, that self-esteem is the way you see yourself and the way you see the world and the way you handle yourself and the way you handle the world. The purview at which you see the world, that there are so many good and bad in the world, and you can see both, right? And for me, one of the things that I've learned that has grounded me is how I've been able to see the good in the world. And I would like to share an example before I actually go into the self paradigm, because I think this example and this stories actually shows like how you can, perceive the world. And it was when I was going to the hospital some weeks ago or some months ago. I was, as I was about to enter the hospital door, somebody held the door for me. They opened the door for me. It was an old woman. And as they opened the door for me, they smiled. And I smiled back and I said, "Thank you very much." And they smiled back too and they said, "Thank you." And the way they said that thank you was extremely genuine. And there was something there that I saw. I felt good that day. I was tense before I was going to the hospital. I was planning to do some numerous tests at the hospital, but I felt good after that conversation. And there are many people who open the door for us in the world that will never get to say thank you, we're rushing. And the understanding of self is that you're able to reflect and be aware of the world and your surrounding, that most of the time we are rushing, we are trying to get somewhere, right? You're trying to get to places that we don't get to see the good that happens in the world, that there are actually people who have held the door for us multiple times and we never get to observe that, and we never get to say thank you to them. So it's very important that when you're thinking about yourself and understanding of self, you're also thinking about your understanding of the world as well. So I just want to quickly point that out. I want to quickly tell that story that it's only when you see the world and when you start, being aware of the world, that you start understanding even yourself as well, as you try to navigate and understand the world. And going to my self paradigm, it is important that, in the world where you're constantly saying maybe somebody is better than me or I'm better than somebody is sharing their wins on social media, somebody is winning an award and you're thinking, what am I actually doing with my life? But then you also don't know what they are battling with, right? You also don't know what you're actually competing with as well. And I have felt that way as well, right? Most of the time I used to say that jealous is a feeling, right? And there is nothing wrong in being jealous, right? What is wrong is how you deal with it. If you decide to make that affect you, right? You can be jealous and be like, that's okay, that's their win. I'm happy for them. What can I learn from them, right? And I think that's where self-awareness comes from. So self-awareness is like, who am I? How do I understand myself, right? How am I different from other people? Being aware of your emotion, being aware of your jealousy, being aware of the way you feel, and acknowledging that I feel this way, but I'm going to do something about it. And I'm like, this is the way I feel. This, we are human beings. We can feel. That's why we are humans, right? We have this deep sense of feeling. We can feel what is going on in our mind. So it's very important for us to be aware of ourselves and who we are, And to achieve self-awareness, to understand that why am I even competing with this person? Why am I comparing myself with that person? Why am I comparing my journey with the person's journey? And it also helps you to put things into perspective, right? And that's where self-conversation actually comes in, right? Like it's having self-conversation, constantly speaking with yourself. And I used to do this a lot. I would sit down. There was a time I was struggling in one of my jobs. Like I was literally struggling. So I was combining about 3 to 4 jobs together and they were like draining me. And to the extent that one of the job was actually crumbling. And I could recall on that job, my program assistant walked up to me one day and said that, man, this is failing. We need to do something about it. And I went back and I was reflecting and I was thinking, and I'm like, I should do something about it, right? When I went back home, I'm like, what are the things that are stressing me? That was the thing I said to myself, right? Because I was already burnt out, I was like thinking about, so I started reflecting on the jobs that were stressing me and I was mapping that out and I was journaling because one of the ways to actually deal with some of these issues is, as well, or one of the ways to have self conversation is actually to journal the way you feel. So I went back and I was journaling and I was writing the way I feel or the way I felt then. And I was like just in my bed lying down and just thinking that, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel this way? What are the jobs that are threatening me? What are the jobs that are troubling me amongst all the jobs that I was doing? And I said, okay, there's one particular job that is troubling me and I'm going to quit that job, but I'm not going to quit it immediately because there were some certain things that I still need to do on the job. So what I did was that I would make sure I show up, do the things that I'm supposed to do. But what are the other things that are taking away my time that is actually burning me out? So I noticed I was spending most time on social media, which means I need to probably cut the time I was spending on social media at the time. So one of the things that I did was I started sleeping around 9 a.m. in the morning. In fact, when I go into trouble or trouble mode, the moment I start sleeping at 9 p.m. rather in the evening, now I meant 9 p.m. The moment I start sleeping around 9 p.m. in the evening, it means that yeah, there's a trouble, and I'm waking up extremely really early, like 5:30 or 5 o'clock, and I'm making sure I get up early to pray, to run, to get my day started early enough, and to just like detach from social media as well. Those are the ways I get myself back right. Those are the ways. So I was like, what are the things that are taking away my time? I also noticed that during that moment, I was saying yes to a lot of people. Like I was like saying yes, and I was like just saying yes to everything. So I had to be like, I need to say no, and I need to communicate to people. There are people who weren't happy because I was saying no to them. But again, I need to put myself in the equation as well. But I came to all of these things because I was having self-conversation with myself and I was journaling, and I was able to understand the problem that I was in at the time. So without having that self-conversation, you can't have self-awareness. And I think there's something about self-conversation is that when you have self-conversation, it also helps you with the relationship that you have with other people. So I remember whenever I receive feedback as well, when there was a time I actually received feedback from somebody and the person was like, Ahmed, you shouldn't be doing this here. You shouldn't be doing like this. Like they gave me really, 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 feedback that got to me. And I went into my room and I reflected on the feedback and I'm like, I was thinking about the feedback and I'm like, actually they were right and they were true. And I went back to them and I said, again, all of these things also grounds you in humility. I said, hey, hello. I know you gave me that feedback and I think it's a good feedback. And yeah, that's a really good feedback. And I think I should probably be more present. I think I should be doing this more, right? And that happens because I was able to process that emotion by having self-conversation with myself. So it's very important that when you think about self-awareness, you don't just think about self-awareness on its own itself. Self-conversation is what helps us with self-awareness. And when we are aware of who we are as an individual, then we're able to have good relationship with other people that actually maybe it's not other people that are the problem, maybe it's you, right? And it's that understanding, it's that self-understanding, and self-understanding comes with self-conversation. Why am I jealous? Why am I competing with somebody? Why am I, doing this way? That my journey is actually different from another person's journey. That my journey is unique on its own, and that is also amazing. That the fact that somebody is winning means that I'm also winning. That sometimes my win is in the process, not in the outcome entirely. Even though outcome is important, sometimes our win is in the process and is in the journey, right? It's understanding the journey, understanding your own journey, and actually embracing your own journey. And the only way you can embrace your own journey is through the understanding of self. And to do that, you can achieve that through self-conversation. Because with self-conversation, it then helps you to be self-aware. And in doing self-conversation as well, and in trying to be self-aware, there's something called self-contention. And I think I came up with this recently and I added it to my self-paradigm. We were having a conversation recently in the office about self-compassion, and I just really thought about like the idea of self-contention. That contention is extremely powerful. And for me, when I'm trying to understand the world, when I'm trying to understand what is going on in the world, one of the things that I do is to contend with something. By contending means that I'm learning, I'm reflecting, I'm grounding myself, and I'm not just jumping into making a quick decision, or I'm not just jumping into talking about things I don't understand. So you see me actually reflecting, contending, holding this together. I could recall that sometimes it might take me about 5 months to understand something before I start telling it or talking about it, because I'm trying to contend with it and understand with it. And I'm trying to contend with myself, to understand myself, to understand my values, to understand like why am I making this particular decision, or why am I going through this particular process. So I'm asking myself key questions and I'm contending. And contention actually again, it's deeping us, right? Because as human beings, we need to be deep. Like there's something about having a deep sense of self, and I think there's something about contention that helps you to understand that deep sense of self as well. And I think contention is also important in decision as well. I think when you're trying to make a decision, now we're talking about decision making as we're talking about sense of self. When you're trying to make a decision, the window between making that decision, that window, it's contention, right? And it's the reason why maybe you're trying to make a quick decision and you're like, can you just give me 1 minute to think? Can you give me 2 minutes to think? Can you give me about a day to think? Can you give me about 2 days to actually think? And in that process, what you're doing is that you're giving yourself a space to contend. Or when you have access to a new information, do you just go around, start talking about that information? Sometimes you need to contend with that information to understand the information, right? And to be able to now come up with like an idea that you have, an understanding of yourself and the understanding of how you understand or interpret the message or interpret the word as well. So for me, contention really helps me and it kind of like grounds me. And I think that's something that I do to make myself aware as well. And I know that's tiring sometimes, grappling with something. I grapple with something because I'm trying to understand it. And by understanding means that I have a better relationship with people. I have a better communication with people as well. And, as we're just talking about, again, self-awareness, we're talking about self-conversation, and we're also talking about the idea of self-contention. There's something around those things that I'm talking about, and it's real, right? Even when you want to change an habit, or you want to change an attitude, or you want to change something that you don't like, that comes with some sort of will. And most time we talk about will and will and will, that you have to have will, right? You have to have will to do this. But then you can't have will if you are not aware first. The only reason you would have the will to change an habit is if you're aware of the reason and of the need of the why to actually change an habit. And that's why they say some people do not have the will. They do not have the will. They do not have the will. The will is actually not the problem. It's the awareness of the will to make that change. And you can say that for politicians as well, right? That when you talk about politicians and you talk about political will, for example, let's even look at politics as a frame of study or as a frame in itself. That the reason why a politician would have a will to change something or to create change is the awareness of the need to make that change. And when they are aware, when I know that there's somebody who is going to die because if I don't do this, there's somebody whose life would be worse if I don't do this. That awareness is what makes them to make a change or change happen as well. That change will not just happen just by our will. Change happen because of the awareness that makes us then pursue the will to create a change that we want to create. So this is something that I've been thinking about and I've been grappling with. That the will to change is stems from the awareness to actually create that change as well, and the will to also understand yourself as well is what makes that transformation happen as well, right? And another paradigm that I would like to talk about in terms of like the self paradigm is the self criticality. And this idea of self criticality is actually holding yourself to the highest standard in a way, holding, like evaluating yourself as well. That are you preaching things that you don't believe in? Are you saying things that you don't believe in? Are you saying things that you're not? Or are you calling yourself what you're not? I could recall that when I was like, growing in my leadership journey, I think it was around 2017, I started calling myself a career coach. And I'm like, why am I? And I started calling myself, inspirational speaker, global speaker, and many other things. I mean, I'm not saying you should not call yourself those things, but you also have to reflect on like, what are you calling yourself that you're not? I was calling myself a career coach, and I was like, actually, what career have I built myself to be able to call myself a career coach? I was calling myself a inspirational speaker, and I'm like, how much have I speak to call myself an inspirational speaker? And I'm like, for me to earn all of those reputation of things that I'm calling myself, I need to work towards that. So I had to look back and I'm like, I had to reflect again, have self-conversation as we're talking about to help you with self-awareness, right? I started doing an evaluation and I'm like, no, actually, I don't want to be an inspirational speaker. Rather, I want to be an inspiration. And if I'm an inspiration, what is going to happen is that people would then invite me to come and speak about my work and what I do. And then I can deliver inspiration. Then already I'm an inspirational speaker. But to be an inspiration, how would that happen? I have to walk through a process. I have to walk through a journey. It means that I have to get my hands dirty. So one of the things that I did was that I reviewed my bio and I removed every single thing that that doesn't represent me. I removed every single thing that I was calling myself that I am not. And I started building from the ground to the top. So you need to understand, when you think about self-criticality, it's about self-evaluation. What is it that I am calling myself that I am not? So you need to be true to yourself. They say the truth shall set you free. You need to be truthful to yourself, and you need to be truthful to your journey, and you need to be truthful to who you are to actually go through a process and to make the change that you want to make for yourself and for your life. So again, I think the reflection I had during this moment, I was like, the likes of Nelson Mandela, or the likes of Martin Luther King, or the likes of the people that we admire today, they didn't just start calling themselves an inspirational speaker, but they fought for something. They had a why, they had a cause that they were fighting for. They had a career they were building towards too. And because of their life and because of who they are, they became an inspiration. And people want to listen to them because they have the stories to tell from their own lived experience and from their own experiences. So when you think about self-criticality, what I mean by self-criticality is actually thinking about what are you calling yourself that you're not? I think it's very, very important to reflect on that. And what happens is that actually grounds you as well. And that allows you to go to your process towards getting to the level that you want to get to. And the last bit of my paradigm is the self-compassion. And the truth is that as human beings, we can make mistakes, right? As human beings, we can go wrong. As human beings, we can say things that we might not mean sometimes. As human beings, you can wrong somebody. And because we are humans, we are bound to make mistakes, right? And self-compassion is understanding that I've made this mistake and I forgive myself, right? Oh, maybe I've not put in a strong application. Maybe I think I haven't done enough. It's the idea of like, how do you then forgive yourself for that? That actually you will try better next time. And that's why I tell myself that, when I think that I've not done enough, I've not performed enough, is that, I can actually be better next time. There's another time to be better. Actually, life gives us multiple chances. We used to say that there's no second chance, but there are multiple chances sometimes in the world. And there are chances to be better. There are chances to, be better than who we are yesterday. So whenever it feels like I've wronged somebody, or whenever it feels like I've spoken to somebody in a particular way, whenever if it feels like I've offended somebody, I walk up to them and I'm like, and I feel like, yeah, I'm wrong here. I walk up to them, I'm like, I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. That's not fair on you. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that. That is if I can still see them. I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. I'm really, really sorry. I would work on myself. And those are the things that I'm going to do to make it better. And what is that? You've carried out the burden from you. Like you're not carrying the things in your heart. You've learned to forgive yourself, actually going to confront, the person you've wronged. And I think that's also the idea of having a difficult conversation. The difficult conversation is grounded in humility, is grounded to say that you're humans and you're a human being and you can wrong somebody. And it's being able to walk up to people and being able to have those conversations with them. And I think it's something that I've learned and it has saved me tons and tons of relationships, right? When I've like, I think I wronged you. I think it's not fair. I think I should have spoken to you that way. I was angry. And it's also like part of like self-accountability, right? When you walk up to people and be like, I'm sorry, I should have spoken to you that way. That's part of self-accountability. And I think it's important for us to like have that as well. And if you can say the person, forgive yourself and learn to be a better person to another person next time. That, I've wronged this person, but I won't be a shitty person to another person again next time. So when you go to another person, you're able to, reflect and able to like, talk to them in a way that it's respectful, right? So self-compassion is one of my last paradigm, and I think it's grounded in accountability, it's grounded in humility, it's grounded in the idea that I am human, I am a human too, and I can make mistakes, and I can wrong people, but I have learned to forgive myself and learn to be a better person next time. And yeah, I think those are my self paradigm, and that's the way I've been able to survive in the complex world today, especially in the world with social media and excessive comparison with other people. And I hope you've learned one or two things today by my self paradigm. And yeah, I am wishing you best of luck as you try to understand who you are and as you try to navigate the world, as you try to understand the world. Thank you.